All righty. Hey, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final AltaPro CLE webinar of 2021. And we have a really great program for you today, which once again features Michael Kahn. Now, many of you may remember Michael from last year's AltaPro holiday webinar, Zen and the Art of Lawyering in a Pandemic, which, by the way, ended up being the most highly attended webinar in our history up until today. This one actually might eclipse that one. So we've got a great audience and a great program. Now, you might recall that Michael's unique in that he's both a lawyer and a psychotherapist. He specializes in helping clients deal with conditions such as anxiety, depression, grief, loss. And today, Michael's going to lay out the concepts and importance of micro self-care, which in short is the concept of taking small steps in order to make big gains and achieve a healthy work-life balance, which we all know is crucial, especially in what's become these now continued uncertain times. So we are very happy and grateful that Michael has agreed to join us today. Now, hosting the webinar today is our very own Jay Reeves, whom you all know as the AltaPro Risk Pro. Ho, Jay, nice to see you there. Jay is also a lawyer and runs the website yourlawlife.com, which too is a website dedicated to helping lawyers achieve work-life balance. And he's also the author of the now highly successful book, The Most Powerful Attorney in the World, which is available on Amazon and other outlets. All right, so before we get started with the housekeeping, I do need to point out that we have yet to receive formal approval for both Ohio and North Carolina. But we do expect to secure this in the next few days. So, you know, if you live in Ohio or North Carolina, or you practice, you know, you can choose to, you know, not attend the webinar, or maybe, you know, go have a sandwich, or maybe attend the webinar and have a sandwich. I would do that, but it's up to you. We welcome you here no matter what. We do expect to get the CLE approved, so just stand by for that. All right, so we're going to welcome comments and questions using the Q&A function, but we're going to reserve actually addressing and answering any of the key questions until the end of the webinars. We just use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Ben, can you forward into the housekeeping slide? Thank you very much. All right, so to download a manuscript of the webinar, go to altaprorpg.com, post-webinar, and check your chat box. We're also going to give you some links there as well. We are approved in all the states except for Ohio and in North Carolina as well, at least right at this moment in time. You do need to complete the survey to receive your credit. You guys all know this. Allow up to 30 days to receive the certificate. If you do need something sooner, let us know. We can get after it and try to get some exceptions made, okay? There are going to be two codes that are going to be revealed during the course of the webinar. There'll be two different code words, if you will. And you need to remember those or write them down, because those you're going to have to put into your survey to validate that you actually did attend the webinar. All right. If you're participating via phone or sharing your computer screen with somebody else, you need to email us at info@altaprorpg.com to get the form so you can fill it out and receive your CLE. All righty. Now, again, I mentioned, you know, direct your questions and comments to the Q&A buttons at the bottom of the screen. All right, so that's all I've got to say. I want to turn it over to the reason that you guys are attending, and that would be Jay and Michael. So Jay, turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Todd. Hello, everybody, and welcome to AltaPro CLE Live. My name is still Jay Reeves, better known as the Risk Pro. This guy is the on-call risk management, practice management consultant for lawyers and firms insured through AltaPro RPG. Got a question about practicing law? How do I safely and ethically dispose of case files? What are some best practices for working remotely? Does Santa Claus deliver presents wrapped or unwrapped? Well, for these and other questions, just give AltaPro a call or contact your LPL insurance agent. And faster than you can say, "It's a wonderful life," the Risk Pro will be there to help you out. And by the way, the correct answer is Santa delivers them unwrapped. Before I go further, let me say thank you to all of you attending We've got lawyers from Illinois to Indiana, Austin, Texas to Akron, Ohio. And you're the reason these programs have not only been successful, but have attracted some of the top thought leaders and experts in the field of risk management and well-being. Along those lines, I am delighted to introduce you to our guests this year. He was the same guest who gave us such a wonderful program last year. It's become our annual holiday wellness event. Michael Kahn is one of the best presenters I've seen on really any topic, but certainly on well-being and loving your law life, getting the most out of your law life. He's just a dynamic, terrific presenter, and he's also a therapist who treats lawyers and actually improves law lives every day. And I'm also pleased to call Michael a mentor of mine and a friend of mine. So Michael, without any further ado, thanks for being here, and I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Jay. Boy, I'm humbled by that you call me a mentor. I would call you a mentor. We're reciprocal mentors. Jay is one of the best storytellers I've ever seen and read. I highly recommend his book. And Jay and I have, I think we initially crossed paths when my partner, business partner and I were doing programs for another lawyer's malpractice insurance company. So, welcome everybody. Happy holidays. And I've got a bunch of stuff to do. I'd love to be in the same room with you 300 folks. That wouldn't obviously be possible since you're all over the country. But I feel very grateful for Zoom. Over the last couple of years, Zoom has helped us all stay connected. So I want to just start, speaking of staying connected and looking at computer screens, I want to start with, let's take a break from that. I'm actually out on the West Coast, so it's still morning for me, but some of you on the East Coast, it's already into the afternoon, so you've been probably staring at your screens for a while now. And folks in the West Coast too have. So I want to just take a break. You see it says 20-20-20. So ideally, every 20 minutes you do this. You take a break, you look out the window, and you take 20 seconds to look at what can I see that's 20 feet from me. I'm doing that right now. I have a window right to my right here, and just check out for 20 seconds, what do I see? For me, I see blue sky in Vancouver, Canada, which is not something to ignore in the winter here. I see trees, I see birds, and it's just nice to look at something other than a computer screen. So I'm just going to be quiet for another 5 seconds or so and let you guys do that. Also taking a deep breath as I do it. Okay. So that's something you can do anytime. I would say if you want to do it with some kind of consistency, you can have a time frame every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, an hour. Just something to give you both a mental break and literally give your eyes a break from staring at the computer screen. So just we're all lawyers here. I'm a retired lawyer, but just to make a case for well-being, we're going to see a quote here from Christopher Newbold, who is with a company called Alps. And you see what he says there. If lawyers aren't taking care of themselves, they're more commonly commit malpractice. And that's not based on some, just some story. This is based on the cases they see, the lawyers that they work with who get into trouble. So for them, well-being is very much connected to good lawyer practice and safe and good risk management practice. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on what leads to unwellness, but just so we're all on the same page here, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but here are some of the things that can lead to unwellness, can lead to acute stress. And my guess is some of those things apply to you, maybe more than one. You can see I have vicarious trauma on there. Some of the areas where some of you practice are, we hear some pretty disturbing stories. We see some disturbing images. Let's say if you're working in criminal law, or you're working in immigration law or family law. So those things can impact us, even though they're things that we haven't experienced firsthand. This vicarious nature of the impact and the accumulative nature of that can really take its toll, sometimes without us even knowing. And then some of the other issues just of practicing law, billable hours. You see I have lack of control up there that's highlighted. Lack of control over many things, such as when you, let's say you're in litigation, you don't have any control over the facts. You don't have any control over the law. You don't have any control over the judge or the jury or opposing counsel. There are a lot of things we don't control. And that takes some getting used to and some being able to identify what are the things I can control. And then we'll talk about that for most of the program here. What are the things that you can do? And then, of course, as Todd said, I presented last year, a year ago, on the impact of COVID on the practice of law. And guess what? COVID's still around. And now we've got, Omicron. So we're almost 2 years into this, not quite. So let's not forget, and for some of you it's hard not to forget the impact of COVID. For others, it's maybe become more something in the background that we've gotten quote unquote used to, but it's there. It's still there. It's still taking its toll. It's still taking things away from us, like travel. It's better than it was a year ago for some of us, but it's still having its impact on us. There was a great article in the New York Times about, he talked about the concept of languishing a few months ago. Adam Grant, I think his name was. It's you can probably still access it. It might be behind a paywall at the Times, but he talked about the impact of COVID and how it's leading to many of us to have that feeling of languishing. It's not depression, it's not burnout, it's something in between. Now, probably about 3 years ago, the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing put out a report called The Path to Lawyer Wellbeing. Some of you may have seen this. And it had recommendations for mostly legal employers. Some recommendations for individuals, but a lot of it was based on what can legal employers do to encourage greater well-being with the lawyers and paralegals and others who work at the firms to encourage improved well-being. And I'm going to pause here because I think this is the point where Jay's going to put up the first poll.
Yeah, as you know, Michael, these programs are interactive. We want to hear from our audience. So on the subject of well-being, and maybe even a notch higher than well-being, to be thriving, I feel I'm thriving in these areas. Choose all that apply to you: emotional, physical, mental, financial, spiritual well-being. And it may be interesting, Michael, we asked our lawyers a year ago, 1 year into COVID, the same question. Only 18% said at the time they were coping well. More than a third said they were having trouble coping, frequently unmotivated, trouble focusing, and other coping issues. So it'll be interesting to see what this year's results are.
Yeah, and you can see I can see the results coming in. We've got about 76% of the folks who have answered, up to about 80% now. So we'll leave it open, Jay, for another 15 seconds or so, I guess. But as we're looking at it now, it looks like it's a pretty even distribution of areas, of the 5 areas, in terms of I feel I am thriving in these areas. All right, I'm going to end the poll now because it seems to have slowed down, and then, someone else can share the results, or there we go. So as you can see, it is fairly well spread out, that 60%, between 50 and 60% say that they are thriving in these areas. Now, we don't know, this is a multiple choice, so we don't know who answered more than one to this and who answered none. But that's I think somewhat encouraging, at least, that we've got more than half for every one of these. So that question was based on this image, and this is something that was in the lawyer well-being report. And you can see how all those different areas. Now, the one area that is new and that wasn't in that poll, and actually wasn't in the report either, cultural well-being. That's been added by the Oregon Attorney Assistance Program, and where I do work with the Lawyer Assistance Program of British Columbia in Canada, that we have added. Now, other LAPs may have added that as well now in their work, but that's, to me, a really important addition, cultural well-being. But you can see the others, emotional, recognizing. I'm not going to go through all these, spend a lot of time, but I encourage you to look at these definitions. But emotional, recognizing the importance of emotions. To me, as a therapist, that seems like a no-brainer. But for us lawyers, we tend to overvalue our thinking ability, our analytical skills, and maybe don't value as much the information that our emotions are telling us. So that would be one. Now, it can be hard, certainly, if it's not something we've done, particularly it's been trained out of us. But that's something that I encourage you all to do, is to value the information that our emotions provide us. Physical, I think you all know what that means in terms of exercise, but it includes diet and nutrition. Social, which has been highly impacted by COVID for many of us, more isolation, working from home. We're not connecting as much with our colleagues at the office. Just for those, and when you're in the office, you walk past someone's office, you stick your head in, you say hello for 30 seconds, you connect, or you walk to someone's office to get some guidance. Now, if we're working from home, it takes a little more intention to do that. I had a client who I've been working with who felt very isolated, and I was working with him on how to talk to a colleague about how he wants to maybe have coffee. He was a little bit uncomfortable with making that ask and wasn't sure how to do it. He also was afraid that they'd say no. So you didn't have to deal with that when you're in the office. It just happened. Spiritual. It's not just necessarily about religion, organized religion. It's just, do you have some sense of connection to something meaningful to you, or something where you have purpose? For some people, it's parenting. Being a good father, being a good mother, that's something that has purpose, and that's wonderful. But is there something for you? Intellectual, we tend to get a good amount of that as lawyers. But are there things that you pursue outside of law? Are there things that stimulate you outside of law that are curious for you? Do you take one of those master's classes? You've probably seen commercials for those, on cooking or on filmmaking or something like that. And then occupational, that one's obvious. And then cultural, I mentioned before, engaging in practices that keep you connected to your culture, whatever your culture is. Okay. So I see a lot of chat coming in here. I'm not going to look at that, but feel free to let me know, Jay or Ben, if there's anything you want me to comment on in the chat.
Well, I'll just jump in here,
Please.
Michael. You may be interested. We had one comment concerning the first polling question. An attendee says, "I wish you had had none of the above as a child, not thriving in any."
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
So let's not overlook the fact that not everyone is doing great.
No. In fact, the report, that well-being report, said that we hear a lot about substance abuse and substance dependent issues in the legal world, but the report said most lawyers don't have substance issues, but that doesn't mean they're thriving. So just because you don't have a substance abuse issue or dependence issue doesn't mean that you're thriving either. So the report said we want to connect with those lawyers who don't have substance issues but don't feel like they're enjoying their practice or enjoying their life. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide. And I mentioned earlier about there are so many things outside of our control as lawyers. And so this slide just emphasizes that. What are the things that I do control? I do control what I say. I can control my actions, my behavior, and you can see other things, my play, although we tend to lose that sense of play as adults. So those are the things that I'm going to be focusing on here. What are the things that we can control to help us improve our well-being? And I'm focusing on, generally speaking, on micro self-care. And they are, as Jay or Todd said, I forget which one of you said this, maybe both of you, they are small, doable, free, or inexpensive things that I do or you can do on a regular basis throughout your day, not just something you do in the morning and then you work and then do something in the evening, or not just I go on a 2-week vacation, but what are the things that I can do to replenish myself throughout the day? Particularly because times were hard before COVID, but again, and I don't want to hammer COVID too hard, but I also don't want to forget it. It's definitely impacting us. So we need to be intentional about doing replenishing practices throughout the day. And the emphasis is on repetition to make it a habit. What are these things that I can do on a regular basis that become then automatic? One way to know, some of you might think, well, I don't know. I have no idea what I can do to replenish myself. I am at a loss. So what can be helpful, and this is my approach to counseling with some clients, is take a look through a solution-focused lens. So think about, when have I enjoyed my job? When have I been more relaxed or been able to replenish myself? When have I, it's not up there, but to respond to the person saying I'm not thriving in any area, when have I thrived at least a little bit emotionally, socially? Or when have I felt more connection to a higher purpose, to meaning? So it's going to school on yourself. Even if it's small little pieces that you identify, you can build on that. And then you could also pay attention to times when you enjoy your job. Pay attention to times when you're more relaxed, or do something that helps you feel more replenished. Pay attention to times when I feel more socially connected. So it's having that lens, because as lawyers, we're trained to look for what's wrong. We're trained to anticipate problems, which helps a lot, of course, for our clients. Where it can become a problem, though, personally, if we're only paying attention to things that are wrong or things that could go wrong, because then we're not looking for things that are working. So it's really, this exercise can maybe, and I've got a couple more exercises in a little bit, can help you change that lens. And here's something else you can do. And in fact, we have, I think this is a moment for our second poll, Jay, right?
Right. Yeah. So we all have our personal oases or replenishers that we go to recharge us. And so the question for our attendees are, which of these in your personal lives are some of your go-to places to recharge your batteries? We've got spouse, partner, family, friends, exercise, being in nature, volunteerism. Feel free to mark all that apply to your life. Michael?
Yeah, that's great. I know for me, as these are being answered, for me, replenishers are exercise. Absolutely. I went jogging before this program today. I jog in the rain. You have to in Vancouver if you're going to run regularly. Music, listening, playing the guitar are big ones for me. Just having my favorite tea is something I look forward to. So those are some of mine. And it looks like we've got about 86% who have answered. Let's wait another 10 seconds or so for folks. We're almost at 90%. You guys are fantastic in interacting with us today. And
Michael, I'm going to share one. I'm going to share one of mine.
Please do.
Here's one of mine. I enjoy coffee and hot tea, and I enjoy my wife. And a ritual that we have is we give each other a coffee mug. This was my Christmas coffee mug from last year. It's Snoopy.
I love it. It looks like Snoopy, yeah.
So yeah, it's not only comforting for me to hold the cup and to drink drink the coffee, but also think of my wife, and I think of her, and I feel better.
I love that. And that small act, that's a great example. That's a small act. That's a micro self-care act, but it's got so many layers though. The first one is the coffee or the tea that you're drinking, but then the warmth of the cup, particularly in the winter. So you've got that positive feeling of warmth physically, and then the warmth of the connection with your wife as you're thinking about your wife. So that's got 3 different layers, that small little act that you do. That's a great example of micro self-care.
Yeah, now you would have to ask her if she feels the same when she's holding my mug.
Well,
might be a depleter for her, but
I highly doubt that, Jay. But that does speak to the fact, though, that even in our personal relationships, those who are close with, sometimes they can be depleting. If we're having a rough patch with our partner, if we have an argument about something, so that they can be mostly, hopefully for most of us, usually replenishers, but sometimes depleters. And we need to consider, how can I replenish when I'm going through that rough patch with my partner or my friend. So you can see the poll, 73% said spouse, partner, family. Exercise was up there as well, being in nature, and we'll talk about nature in a moment. Friends, so clearly connection with others was up there, and some kind of movement with either exercise or being in nature, which often involves movement, walking or biking. And then you've got a solid number of folks who were silence or meditation or mindfulness. It's so hard to find silence in our world anymore, or disconnection, because it's so easy to go to our phone or to go to our computer, to watch Netflix, or to be interrupted, or social media, be interrupted with texts or whatever. So to find silence really takes some being intentional. So thank you. And again, we don't know how many folks answered more than one here. And there might be some folks, like in that first poll, who maybe didn't answer any of these.
I'm going to jump in again, because we just got a couple of great comments. Several people put pets, crafts, artistic expression, cooking.
Great.
And then somebody just put hockey. I'm not sure.
Hey, they're probably up here with me in Canada.
So hockey makes an appearance. Anyway, we could spend an entire program just talking about.
We could. And pets, I'll second that one. Animals are definitely something for me. Our dog sadly died last year, so we haven't gotten another dog yet. But absolutely, dogs, any kind of animals are replenishers for me. So that's a question to ask yourself. What are your personal energy expenditures or replenishers? But the first question is about expenditures. So you want to identify what replenishes you, but you also want to identify what expends energy. So then you can be more planful about doing something to replenish. So this is personal. What are some of the personal things that expend energy for you? For me, an easy one would be taxes. Doing my taxes. Ugh. Now that's fortunately just a once a year thing. So what are the day-to-day things that expend time for you? Or expend energy, I mean. And then there's replenishers. And then professional. Now the poll didn't ask about professional, but what are your day-to-day expenditures at work? Like for me, it was, I hated doing depositions. So whenever I knew I had, now I didn't think about this stuff back when I was a 25-year-old lawyer, but if I did now, I'd think about, okay, what can I have planned to do after this deposition today that can help replenish me? And what can I do before the deposition to help fill me up, to help get me ready? Maybe it's jogging. Maybe it's doing meditation. Maybe it's doing yoga. Maybe it's spending time with my dog on the floor. If I have my dog at the office, or if working from home, which many of us are. And then think about what are those expenditures and what are those replenishers. Okay. Jay, do you have any that come to mind for you, either expenditures or replenishers for professionally?
Yes, the first thing that popped into my mind,
Your mic's a little bit your mic's a little bit hard to hear. You're a little bit hard to hear audio wise.
okay, sorry about that.
That's better.
It could be a blessing not hearing me, but what I found, I'm not actively practicing law like as you are not as well, but when I was practicing, I represented other lawyers in disciplinary and malpractice cases. And I found that clients could be both replenishers and depleters. Some of them would just drain the life out of me. But others, other cases, and I can recall specific ones, they weren't always the ones that worked out beautifully or happily, but they made me feel confident and strong about what I was doing and that I was doing good and important work. So I found that interesting that my clients, I can picture some that literally would, my heart would sink when others, oh yes, that was such a positive experience. So
great example. And you saw on the slide, I had kids up there for personal expenditures. One of your, and no parent, you ask a parent, I don't have a favorite, right? But one of your children might just be harder for you. Might expend your energy more, and the other one maybe not as much. I see in the chat someone said, I decreased my office hours and took a part-time job. And then someone else said cleaning the house was a replenisher. And then somebody else came in and said that they'll welcome them to visit their house and replenish their energy, clean their house any day they want. So thank you for that. All right, let's hold on one second. Let me just move this. So that last bullet on that slide, I pretty much covered this, but do you anticipate times when you'll be depleted and have a plan? Do you schedule energy replenishers? And do you have people in your life, either both professionally and personally, that you know you can go to and talk to when you feel very depleted? Also, it's important to, wherever you're working, if you're at home or you're at the office, you want to be intentional about what your environment looks like. And if you're home, it can be a little bit challenging depending on the size of your home, and if you have separate rooms where you can create an environment, if you're sharing a room, or if a bedroom is ending up being an office for some of us. But create an environment that is comfortable. You're spending a lot of time in this place, and you can see I have a plant. Why would I have the Statue of Liberty up there? Because when I was a lawyer, I had an office with no windows, where all the offices were in the middle of the building. The secretaries and legal assistants, all their desks were all around the outside, so they had all the windows. Good for them. So I had a poster of the Statue of Liberty in my office because I just love the Statue of Liberty, and that was my way of giving me some window to something. Some people, standing desk is something that can be helpful for folks. Your lighting is really important. The fluorescent lights in my office when I was a lawyer were terrible. I didn't know at the time that I could have anything different. Again, as a 25-year-old guy. I just went with the fluorescent lights. But now in my office as a therapist, those fluorescent lights never come on. I bring in lights into the office. Music, as I said, for myself, is a replenisher for me. I don't play music during my sessions, of course, but in between sessions, or if I'm not seeing a client, I'll put on some classical music or other kind of music that because that fills me up. And then my dog, that actually is my dog Biko, who passed last year, and she would come to my office and be with my client. She was a good therapy dog. So it was nice for me and nice for my clients. So look at your environment, be intentional about that, and including your car, by the way. Some folks' cars are like a third office. If you spend a lot of time in your car, you want that to be also a place that you feel comfortable in and is replenishing for you. Those of you who have kids, that can be a challenge, of course. You'll find pieces of food all over the place, but do the best you can. And another a good micro self-care activity is just doing breathing exercises. This is just one of them. This is not the only one. This is one that I learned from a doctor who studied with Dr. Andrew Weil. Some of you may have heard of him. He's big in, he's a doctor, but holistic medicine. This is called 4-7-8, and the 4 represents 4 seconds of breathing in your nose, through your nose, 7 of holding your breath for 7 minutes. Nope, just kidding. I just want to make sure you're listening. 7 seconds. And 8 is for 8 seconds. So 4, 7, 8, all seconds. And the 8 is the longest because it helps you empty your lungs so you can take in a good deep breath. So I'd like to just practice this one with all of you. And Jay, you're going to be my guinea pig. I'm going to ask you after we're done how this was for you. So ideally you do this with your eyes closed. You don't have to, but it helps to shut out any other stimulation. So close your eyes, and I'm going to count through 2 of these cycles for you. And then I'll have 2 more cycles. You do 2 cycles at your own pace. And then when you're done, just keep your eyes closed for a moment or 2. We're not going to have a lot of time here, but I want you just to get in touch with the difference that short breathing exercise made for you. Okay, and close your eyes and breathe in for 4 through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And breathe out through your mouth for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, in through your nose for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And breathe out through your mouth for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now do 2 more on your own. Okay. Hopefully you got in those 2. So that's a total of 4 you did, and I see a comment from Christopher, that he does this exercise and he finds it to be a good one. So good. Thanks, Chris. So Jay, what was that like for you? And be honest, of course. You can let me know that it was completely unhelpful, but what was it like?
Well, it was relaxing. I'm a little self-conscious thinking 300 people are watching me close my eyes. And
Right.
but relaxing. And 2 things, it helps me to close my eyes. I actually visualize the breath easier coming in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So closing the eyes help. I noticed the exhalation, the breath going out is warmer. That suggests
Yeah.
the warmth that's in me. My body
Right. Oh,
is
that's
warm.
great.
And the other thing is, it was harder. I'm not sure harder is the right word. The exhalation, the 8 exhaling, that seemed less natural than. But when I went the full 8, the intake just seemed much more natural. I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense, but
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that, but you paid attention to also the how the breath felt, the temperature, and that's something you can do. You can also do some imagery if you want. You can also imagine that the breath coming out has a certain color, the breath coming in has a certain color, or you can say to yourself, breathe in relaxation, breathe out stress. There are lots of things you can do to connect, to add to that exercise, but it looks like I'm looking at the chat as well. Someone said they've been using this for years when they're finding it hard to go to sleep. Yes, that can be, I've done that as well. And someone said that I may need Alta Pro after suggesting that they hold their breath for 7 minutes. I'm going to maybe need Alta Pro in the future. But Jay, that's a great description, by the way, and of not only paying attention to the 4-7-8, but what does the breath feel like? And as I said, you can do other things to add to this exercise, like imagery or words. So a very simple thing you can do on a regular basis throughout your day, and maybe even have triggers like have your phone remind you. It's a way also to just pause. And for me, I love doing this. I love leading the exercise, because when I stop counting and hand it off to you to do it at your own pace, we all get that time of silence, even if it's only for a minute or two. And I love that, because I get very little silence throughout my day, except when I go to bed. But then when I go to bed, sometimes my thoughts are loud. So consider doing that throughout your day. And then there are some apps as well. I'm very familiar with 10% Happier, which is an app, and also it's the podcast. Dan Harris, who was a journalist for ABC, had a panic attack on the air. You can find it on YouTube, actually. And then he's created this app and podcast where he interviews folks, but the app includes lots and lots of meditations that you can do around specific topics. So I haven't used Headspace or Calm, but I've heard good things about both of those. I'm sure some of you out there are familiar with those two apps that I'm not. And this is something else you can do. And this is called a gratitude exercise. And the objective here is for 21 days, to write down 3 new things that you're grateful for every day. And you see the new is in caps. You can't repeat anything. So the first day might be my health, my marriage, my kids. Well, that's the last time you can write down any of those 3 things. Not to say you're not grateful every day for them, but this forces you to start looking for things that you're taking for granted. So by day 20, you're needing to really look for things. And that's a good thing. So for example, I mentioned it again, I see blue sky. The sun's out. That's one for me today. Doing this program I'm grateful for. I love doing these. So I'm grateful that Jay and Todd reached out to me again. And the third would be my jog this morning. So now I can't say any of those things again. So you have then 63 things at the end of this exercise, and it gets you into the habit of looking for things that you're grateful for. And this is evidence-based research that shows that having a habit of gratitude can impact your mood and your attitude. So that's one exercise. Now there's another one, and by the way, Sean Acker has a wonderful TED Talk about this and other things regarding happiness. I highly recommend you look Sean Acker 2011 TEDx talk. It's very entertaining at the very least, but he talks about gratitude there and other things. Now, if you think, gosh, 21 days, I don't know. How about this one? 3 good things. This is just a week. So for a week, write down 3 good things that went well for you with as much detail as possible each day. So an example, it can be a big thing, like I got a raise or I was promoted, or a small thing like, and this is something, and this may sound cheesy to you, but it just fills me up when I'm walking on the street. I'm super extroverted. Someone smiles and I smile back, or someone says hello. So that's one of mine. You have your own unique thing. But what are 3 things each day for a week? 3 good things. And you write it. Part of it is writing it down because that helps you remember it. And you don't have to, but that is, in the research they did, that was part of the research study, as folks wrote it down. And again, based on the research, this showed that it had an impact on people's mood and on their attitude about their lives. And that, you see the last bullet down, include how this event made you feel at the time and how it makes you feel later on as you're remembering it. All right. Jay, do you have one that comes to mind for today? I won't ask you to do 3.
I'm grateful I decided to wear my Santa hat. I debated on that.
I am grateful as well.
But
I love Jay's I love Jay your playfulness, Jay. I'm grateful for that.
Well, thanks. And I had the pleasure some years ago of meeting Martin Seligman, or attending a talk by Martin Seligman, who is sort of a pioneer of positive psychology. And it was transformative for me because I was actively practicing at the time. And just as you said, Michael, I was trained to look for the problems, because I would solve the problems. And it was transformative for me to start thinking, what went right today? What made me happy today?
I love that. Yeah, that's another way to put it. Yeah, what went right today? I like that. That's great. Thank you, Jay. So all of this, or that exercise and many more, I encourage you to go to the website Greater Good in Action. And you can see, I don't know if you can read that, the words underneath it at the top left there, science-based practices for a meaningful life. And you see the boxes at the bottom. You can find science-based, evidence-based, research-based exercises that will help you around empathy or connection or forgiveness. You see awe is highlighted there. Something that I've done, haven't regularly done it, but I'd like to, is something they call the awe walk. Just walking around and looking for the things that give you a sense of awe, whether they be big things like this in Vancouver, there's this remarkably built building that looks like, I'm not sure how it stands up because of how it's curving, and that's amazing. Or it could be just looking down and looking at a blade of grass. So you can go to this website and find things that you are most attracted to or need, and find exercises to help you with that. And I think the early poll that Jay had up there, hold on, I just want to make sure okay, that Jay had up there was about thriving, I think, or one of the polls talked about going out into nature. And that has been studied over and over again, the positive impact of going out to nature. Stanford study showed that, this is kind of like a duh. Volunteers who walk through a lush green portion of the campus were more attentive and happier than those walking near heavy traffic. Seems like a no-brainer. They did a second study that was looked at rumination. What's a similar type of walk on impact on rumination? And what's the impact on our brain? And in the interest of time, I can't spend a lot of time on this, but basically they found through self-report that rumination went down dwelling on the negative aspects of their lives, plus that part of the brain that's active when we ruminate was quieter. Now I want to spend in just the few minutes we have left to talk a little bit about our self-talk. We all talk to ourselves. Often it's generic, like, oh my gosh, I forgot to call my sister back or whatever, but sometimes it can be harmful. They're constant and they can impact our emotions and behavior, but we can unlearn them. And here's some examples of negative self-talk, cognitive distortions, they've also been called that. I fall into a couple, I do all of them. Like I asked Jay, which ones do you do? And he said, yeah, pretty much all of them. For me, I do a lot of mental filter, focusing on failures of mine and not on successes. I told them when we started that I kind of have a Rolodex of my failures. For those of you who remember what Rolodexes are, I'm showing my age. And labeling. If I make a mistake, I call myself names. Oh, you're an idiot, or you're a loser. And it's very toxic. And it impacts impacts how I feel. And we also sometimes just have thoughts that aren't necessarily we don't call ourselves names, but we have thoughts that impact how we feel and then can impact our actions. So what if you had this thought, before a trial will start, I'm going to just blow this trial. Well, the thing to do is first identify the thought, then challenge it. Is this fact or opinion? Look for the evidence that you're going to blow this trial. Generate a more accurate belief, and then put those thoughts into perspective. And here's an example. So this would be just how to finish these unfinished sentences. But here's some questions that a lawyer could ask themselves if they have that thought, I'm going to blow this trial. How do I know this is going to happen before the trial even starts? How do I know I'm going to blow it? How many times have I actually blown a trial before? How many times have I said this before, but it's never happened? By the way, Mark Twain once said, I've had many troubles in my life. Most of them have never happened. I love that quote. Because it's this kind of worrying that we do that most of the times they don't happen. But what is a possible truth? There could be a possible truth here. And that's, I need to prepare more my opening statement. That needs to be better. Oh, okay. Well, that's a real problem that I can do something about. What can I do to fix this? Who can I recruit to help me? How can I avoid this in the future? So that's what I mean, pushing back on that you're going to blow this trial, but what is a more realistic way to look at this? Oh, okay, I'm feeling this way because I haven't prepared the opening, or I do need to do a little bit better preparing to do this cross-examination. So it's not being Pollyanna, like everything's wonderful, but it's being realistic. It's pushing back on these automatic negative thoughts that we tend to have. And we all, and this is, I think, the place for is this the place for the last poll, Jay? So as Jay's putting that up there, perfectionism is a trap that many of us lawyers fall into. And so the question up there, Jay, I'll let you introduce the poll.
Well, it just indicates some self-sabotaging behaviors that might apply to some of us. Perfectionism, inner critic, self-talk, procrastination, dwelling on past mistakes, and trouble sticking with things, following through.
Yeah, I do all those things, all of them. I'll answer verbally to this poll. And you're all very fast with answering. Thank you. We've got about 80% of you who have answered. And we'll just wait another 10 seconds or so. And then we'll share the results. Looks like trouble following through on commitments is getting the least number. I guess we lawyers are good about that. When we say, I find that with my lawyer clients, when they say they're going to do something as homework, they very often do. All right, we're about 89%. I'm going to end the poll there and share the results. So perfectionism is a majority. That's not surprising. Inner critic, which is connected to perfectionism. Procrastination, which is connected to perfectionism. If we're perfectionists, we can sometimes procrastinate because we don't want to fail at something, because that would be the opposite of perfection. dwelling on past mistakes. And then you can see following through on commitments is there's still a large chunk at 23%, but a much smaller number than the others. So it's good to be aware of the fact that we're perfectionists. And one of the things, and I don't have a slide on this, but we can tend to, as lawyers, have a fixed mindset. In other words, believe that we are a finished product right now. There's no more growing and changing for us, as opposed to a growth mindset, which is, all right, I've made a good mistake. How can I learn from this moving forward? How can I grow from this moving forward? When you have a growth mindset, you're open to learning and growing. When you have a fixed mindset and you make a mistake, you're more likely to be ashamed or you feel guilty and shut down and not use that as an opportunity to grow. So back to labeling, which I said that I can tend to do, like I'm an idiot. Again, dispute that. What's the evidence? I don't think I'm an idiot. Feel free to share in the chat if you think I am. I don't know if I should have given them that invitation, Jay, but I don't think I am. So what is it? Maybe it's a habit of mine. Maybe it wasn't this way for me, but for some of us, sadly, we've had parents or caregivers who have called us names, and we carry that with us. And to me, that last bullet is the most important one. Would you speak with a close family member or friend or another loved one in the same way you talk to yourself? And the answer, I would think, with 100% of you, hopefully, is no. So why do you deserve that language? And that leads me to talk about very quickly. You see the website up there, self-compassion.org. I encourage you to go to that website to look for exercises to help you be more compassionate with yourself, to identify the critic, and the critic serves a purpose often to motivate you, right? But it's on steroids, and you need to recognize it as helpful, but too helpful at times. You're getting in the way, really. Acknowledge its motivation, but then come up with something. Use your inner coach. Or maybe think of a coach you had at one time, let's say if you played sports, who was a helpful coach, maybe a firm coach, and use that language to speak to yourself as you're speaking to a friend. Say, you got this, Michael. You know how to do this. Stop feeling bad for yourself, and let's do it. You can do it. You've done this before. So that would be kind of a firm coach. And you'd think of other ways. You might think of ways to talk to yourself that are a little bit more compassionate. I know Kristen Neff, who, and then in the number 4, you see it says, combine that exercise with doing something where you're doing something physical, like tapping your heart or just stroking your hand or your arm. That releases a hormone called oxytocin, and that can really have a positive impact on you. Kristen Neff she's like the word on self-compassion, and she has a male research partner, Chris Gemmer, I think his name, and I don't think I have his last name correct. But through 4,000 studies, they've shown the positive impact of self-compassion. You can see them all up there now. And you can see that last bullet I mentioned before. Self-criticism may work short-term as a motivator, but long-term, it's got really negative impacts on us. Increased anxiety, lack of motivation, shutting down the ability to learn and grow. I encourage you to know that you're not alone, that there are folks out there who can support you. And you see I have them listed all up in bullets there, including your lawyer assistance programs. So I'm going to ask you I know we're bumping up against the end here, so we may go just a minute or two over, if that's okay. So I want to ask you, what's one thing you can do to improve your wellness? I've talked about some things here. Just think to yourselves. You can put it in the chat if you want. I encourage you to write it down. What's one thing? And then how do I stay committed to that one thing? So pick one thing, which I've already had you do, and make sure you have SMART goals. Make it specific. Make it sure it's something you can measure. Make sure you're not overshooting. Like if you haven't jogged for years or if ever, don't make the goal, I'm going to jog 7 days a week for a half hour. Well, that's not attainable. You want to do something that's attainable where you can have some success, make sure it's relevant and important to you, and that it's time bound. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for a certain amount of time, and I'm going to check in on how I'm doing after a certain amount of time to see how I'm doing with this goal. Write it down to make it more real and tangible. Tell someone to make it even more real and tangible, because then you're accountable, and ask them to follow up with you. And then real quickly, I do think this is important to mention here. Everything I've talked about up to now is what can you do individually, which I encourage. And if you're working in an unhealthy place where the culture is not encouraging well-being or self-care, then you're going to be swimming against the tide. So it's important particularly if you're out there, those of you who are participating, who have an impact on the culture. If you're a leader in your firm or your organization, really look at what the messages are there, not just what's said, but what does it look like in action, and what are you doing? Because you're a model for the folks who work there. And back to that Path to Lawyer Wellbeing report, there's a lot of suggestions in there for legal employers on what they can do to make create an environment that encourages well-being. And that's it. I've gone a minute over, Jay. Is there anything else that you need to, and we didn't save time for questions, so if there are any questions, I don't mind staying on an extra couple minutes to answer anything, Jay, if there's anything that's come in.
Well, or they've been given your email, so they can email
That's true.
you directly. So
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you. And we also can make available the ABA Wellbeing Toolkit, which has a whole batch of resources for our attendees. Thank you so much, Michael. Awesome as always. Todd, turning it back
It's a
over
pleasure.
to you.
Okay, wow. Well, Michael, Jay, again, great stuff. Things that we can do to improve our overall mindfulness and develop work-life balance. These are great, great tips. Thank you to both. Now, in conclusion, to get the CLE credit, you need to complete the survey, as we mentioned. Don't forget the code words. And just, it'll also open up automatically after the event if you stay on. You can also complete it at any time by visiting the Alta Pro RPG website. The codes are Alta and Pro, no surprise there. We've got contact information for Michael and for Jay. Also, we will have the slide deck posted as well for your consumption or utilization. And with that, I am going to go ahead and say, happy holidays to everybody on the call and to your families, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.